Good morning or good evening, whichever one of the time of day you're watching this. My case was C.J.N. versus Minneapolis Public Schools, the Eighth Circuit in 2003. Here are just some facts. C.J.N. is an 11-year-old boy with lesions on his brain, and he has a long history of psychiatric illness. When he was a toddler, I think 2 or 3 years old, he had some severe virus, which led to infections and super high fevers. And so, because of that, after seeking medical treatment, he developed these lesions on his brain due to the infections. He has been in special education student since kindergarten in the Minneapolis public schools. C.J.N. has constantly had some behavior difficulties, although he has been progressing academically at an average rate. He is a third grader, and he was placed in a special program for students in elementary school at C.J.N. Elementary School. But the cool thing is his third grade teacher got to move with him, so that was the one consistent piece. During this transition, the school district was waiting on some assessments, some functional behavioral assessments, as well as some occupational therapy evaluations that they sought as part of the IEP team. So C.J.N. was moved to a classroom that provided more support, more structure to help with his behavioral issues. It did also offer some academic accommodations, such as reduced homework assignments, more one-on-one time to complete that work, positive reinforcement for meeting those minimum requirements, and then the token economy system. After the results were back, the IEP team met to discuss the results as well as some of the recent behavior that he was experiencing. They met once in October, and then they met again in November. C.J.N. had been struggling with his new classroom. So in third grade, when he got moved, I think just the new environment, they saw a lot more behavior issues, more timeouts, a lot of restraints. A lot of them were lasting 5 or more minutes. He retaliated by kicking and biting staff and students. He was banging his head against the wall. One incident led to a police intervention and then a period of hospitalization. Because of that hospitalization, they then removed him from his elementary school. So the IEP team met and came to a conclusion that C.J.N. would then now be moved to a different elementary, Whittier Elementary School. So he would be there for half day, and then the other half day he was going to a public day treatment program. And the idea is that then they would have, he would go to this elementary school in the morning, for example, and then in the afternoon he would go to the day treatment, hoping to get some more help with some of his mental health issues that he was now experiencing. The elementary school would offer a one-on-one para, and he was going to participate in a point reward system for reinforcement of the good behavior. And then the other half, he would go to that day treatment. So unfortunately, this new schedule and school only lasted 7.5 days. So again, he was removed. Again, this would be the third time to a different location because of an incident that occurred. He was taken to a local crisis center, and the school district then decided that they were going to provide education services to mom and C.J.N. at home. That lasted a day, and I think mom had enough, and she enrolled him in a private school called Calvin Academy, and that was for at-risk students. Then C.J.N.'s mother filed a complaint with the Minnesota Department of Children, Families, and Learning, stating that the school district had not provided C.J.N. with FAPE. And she was also asking for reimbursement for his private school tuition. Several independent evaluators did analyze C.J.N. in March. The IEP team reviewed the summary and indicated that C.J.N. had been placed in Whittier Elementary School half day and the public day treatment program, public separate day school setting, for the remainder half day to provide more mental health services than Whittier could provide. The final decision, the case ultimately raised the question, did C.J.N. receive a free appropriate public education in his third grade year as required by the IDEA? So the question was there supplementary aids and services available? Was there specially designed instruction available? Were there related services to the IEP? And so that's kind of what they were trying to figure out. The district court concluded that he did in focusing on CJ's academic progress and the continuous efforts to tailor his IEP to his behavior challenges. The district court's decision denying reimbursement. The Eighth Circuit stated that the lower court's acknowledgement for the student's academic progress simply meant his IEP managed his behavior problems in a way that allowed him to learn. It did disagree with the parents' characterization of the trial's court ruling as based solely on academic progress. Even assuming more positive behavior interventions could have been employed, but the district made a good faith effort to assist the student in achieving his educational goals. The Eighth Circuit recognized that as long as the student benefits from his or her education, it's up to the educators to determine the appropriate educational methodology. It refused to create a ruling prohibit the use of restraints because the technique may help prevent bad behavior from escalating to a level where suspension is required. The U.S. Circuit Judge Kermit E. Bai expressed concerns that the majority ruling overlooked the requirements that an IEP must be reasonably calculated to address more than academic ability or disability. While the classroom is an important factor, it's not the only factor. It was stated as in the comments that Bai feared the court allowed the state's education system to take a step backward with its tactics, approval of the district's use to restrain to cope with a student's behavior outburst. So, mother was upset, and so she argued that the district court erred by not deferring to a hearing officer conclusions of the law and credibility determinations. C.J.N. contends that HO properly discredited the views of the school authorities, and the HRO erred by believing them and adopting them. Unsupported credibility-based findings of fact and conclusions. C.J.N. also challenged the court's decision not to reimburse C.J.N. for private school tuition. C.J.N. maintains that the district court erred in holding that the district provided him FAPE in his third grade year based on academic progress alone. Mother was upset because she felt that a lot of the IEP meetings and a lot of the rulings were based on the academic progress and not the behavior. So after reading this and kind of looking it over, I do agree with the court when they said that, when they ruled that to deny the parents' request for reimbursement of the private school tuition. That was the mother's decision and not the school's decision or the IEP decision. So I don't think the mom should have been reimbursed for the tuition. I do, however, believe that there were a lot of mistakes that happened which led up to the mother's decision to remove her son from the Minneapolis Public School District. After reading the case, I think you have to take a step back and say, this is a third grader. Most third graders are 8 or 9 years old. This one, he's 11 years old. So one, he's a lot older than these kids. So I'm not really sure if he was held back, or what happened, but he's a little bit older than his peers. So put yourself in that position. What if you were sitting in a classroom and everyone else is a little bit older and they sort of know you were held back? Okay. And he has some behavior issues. But it's because of a brain injury that happened because he had these infections when he was a toddler, and they caused some lesions on his brain. I think we just have to kind of think about the whole picture before we just put the kid into all these different placements. I did disagree with the court's decision. They discussed a lot of the academic progress argument when they discussed FAPE. I feel as if the academic progress was irrelevant to the behavior issues. He was progressing on an average rate. So I do feel like perhaps they needed to look at his disability, the behavior more. A lot of the focus was academics. I do feel the decision needed to be centered around the behavior and not the academics. I also feel that all of this, it seems as if it was really rushed. The behavior challenges C.J.N. expressed during his third grade year, I felt needed more progress monitoring before a decision was made. For example, there was an IEP in October, and then next month, November, and then there was a holiday break, and boom, he was removed. I just feel like it could have been more data involved to support their decisions. I also have issues with how the behavior issues were handled. I mean, it just seems like this kid was being restrained all the time and lasting 5 minutes or more. I also think the team needed a more defined behavior plan. There wasn't a lot of information about that, so that's a question I would like to look more into. And I also think you got to give the kid a little time to adjust. I mean, I have a second grader and third grader at home, and if I were just to pull my kid out and put him in a new school, it would take a lot of time for him to adjust. And this student has some behavior challenges, so it's probably even harder for this kid to be able to make those connections and feel confident being in a school he just got pulled out of. I just feel like it was just rushed. Like perhaps this decision was already, maybe we could assume they wanted this kid out of the school and just let's put him on to the next one, then they can deal with it. I don't feel like there was a lot of consistency within the case, within the behavior, trying to make sure that I know with kids who have behavior struggles and challenges, things have to be consistent so they know what's going to happen next. And I feel like all kids kind of want that. So I just feel like there wasn't a lot of consistency. This kid was getting popped around here and there and everywhere. And he probably felt that if you were to ask him, like maybe he felt like, yeah, nobody really wants me. If the IEP did not appropriately address the behavior problems, then I'm not sure. I don't think that he necessarily received FAPE. That's just a question I was thinking as I was reading this case. So takeaways at a future leader. I think if you rely on rigid structures and inflexibility approaches, you're not getting anywhere with a behavior challenge. It's just going to increase, and you're going to end up bumping heads with these kids. You have to trust the process. And I think that if you can't force change on people, and especially kids, it's going to take them a while, and the progress can't be like super fast. It's going to take a long time for these kids to make those changes, and they're going to take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. You see it all the time. But if you can just be consistent with these kids and keep their environment as consistent as possible and have these plans in place, I think you're going to see growth. And I don't think that Minneapolis Public School did that for this student. Punishing students for their disability rather than teaching the skills to manage and cope, I don't feel that was necessarily the case in his third grade year. There wasn't a lot of collaboration. I think they just had an IEP team meeting. 4 weeks later, they had another one. You gave the kid 4 weeks to show growth. I don't know if that's enough data to support your decision. I also think you need to make sure you and as well as your staff understand the IEP and what does it mean, because that's the law. And so I think you have to constantly collaborate and maybe educate the staff on how to, if you're the students in a general education setting, how do you educate that general ed teacher on this is how you deal appropriate with the behavior or the accommodation or whatever it is with the student. And I think the more collaboration and the more education, then the less anxiety there will be for everybody, and everyone's kind of on the same page and you can communicate effectively. And I also think you have to use data to make decisions, and allow for that time to collect that data. So I got 2 questions for you. What do you think? Do you think C.J.N. received FAPE? Explain your answer. And the second one is, if you were a member of the IEP team, what would you have done? Would it have been different? Would it have been the same? And explain your thoughts. Thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your day.